not be as accurate. But it is a big debate, though, about are we going to have inflation or deflation? I'm not a rocket scientist, but when they're printing more money and issuing more garbage and more derivatives than any time in history, worse than 2008, tells me down the road paper's going to have a problem. But now we're talking about holding your money, so liquid, whatever's what you want in my little, brain. But who knows? Peter Schiff of Euro Pacific Capital joins us, billions under management, and, of course, son of the famous patriot fighting the IRS and the corrupt government, Irwin Schiff, who passed recently. He joins us to discuss all this, Europac.com. So there's your little intro. You've been dead on. Let's just revisit your predictions, where we're at currently, and your next flotilla of predictions, Peter. But congratulations on being accurate. Though it's kind of like congratulations, you're predicting the Titanic just hit an iceberg and we're going to sink. So what do we do?
Well, I still think it's early even to congratulate me, and I'm not going to, take credit prematurely, but it sure does seem like things are proceeding according to the playbook that I laid out. Even though people still believe that the Fed is going to be raising interest rates at some point and that we have a legitimate recovery, the dollar is still falling. More importantly, gold is rising. Gold stocks, again, pretty much all the gold stocks hit new 52-week highs yesterday. And here we have today with the Dow down about 150, the Nasdaq's down over 70 points. Gold is up yet again. It was up a little higher earlier this morning, but the trend is still there. And, you talk about all these people who believe that there's no consequences from the last 8 years or 7 years of 0% interest rates and 3 rounds of quantitative easing. How can anybody believe that there is not a bill that's coming due for all that? Because if you look at what Alan Greenspan did, we had interest rates at 1% for not even 2 years, and then we gradually raised them back up above 5% over a couple of years. No quantitative easing programs at all. So what Alan Greenspan did was very mild compared to what Bernanke and Yellen have done. Yet the consequences, the payback for that monetary policy was the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression.
Sure, and even with cut numbers, they're saying 1.8% economy. I mean, what's the real economy? -2%?
Who knows how negative it is? Because the numbers aren't real, because the inflation rate is being artificially suppressed. But my point is, if we had such a bad consequence of the reckless policies under Greenspan, just imagine what's in store for us now. I mean, this is not just going to be the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. This is going to be the worst crisis, including the Great Depression, because what we're about to enter into, and I think we've already entered into, the beginning of it, but I think it's going to get a lot worse as it progresses. But this is going to be greater than the Great Depression. Meanwhile, you've got President Obama and all sorts of Democratic, talking heads out there
Bernie
trying
Sanders.
to talk about how great this economy is.
And Bernie Sanders running around like an idiot.
Oh, yeah, look, we had this awful jobs report last Friday. Not only was it way below estimates, they revised down the prior month. We had another mass exodus of workers out of the labor force to get the labor force participation rate back down to the lowest it's been since the early 1970s, before women entered the workforce. So if you look at the labor force participation rate for men, it's the lowest it's been in the history of the republic. And so this has been a disaster. And all of these so-called economists who are Democrats, who are trying to say that, the Republicans are wrong for criticizing the economy. If a Republican had been president for the last 7 years and everything was exactly the same, can you imagine what they'd be saying about the rise in income inequality, the rise in poverty, the collapse in real wages, the collapse in home ownership, the mass exodus out of the labor force? I mean, this is statistically the worst economy really in our lifetimes, yet because there's a Democrat president, nobody wants to criticize him from the left.
Well, the show isn't about who's right and who's wrong. It's about knowing the future and getting prepared, obviously, and we'll talk some about that. But, I mean, you did say you thought oil would start going back up.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you did predict that they would, basically start talking about going back, to, QE Unlimited. You predicted how they would go up when they went up. But you've also been predicting that, gold would go back up. I know they're trying to artificially suppress it, but, worldwide the demand's going back up. And they admit in elite publications that, indeed, the, quote, elite are hoarding cash, gold, you name it, building armored bunkers at record levels. Yeah. I mean, what have these people done?
Well, yeah, I mean, the price of oil has almost doubled from its low. It got back above 50. In fact, I saw it as high as about 51.60. It's since pulled back below 50, back in the 49s. But the trend now, I think, is up, and it's going to be even bigger once the dollar really starts to cave in. I mean, the dollar index still hasn't broken down. It's going down. But I think, again, people are still holding out hope. That,
sure. What's the time frame? I know you don't want to go out on a limb, but just you're one of the most accurate guys out there. What's the time frame? What do you really think when you sit around the coffee table talking to your wife?
Well, it doesn't matter. I think it's happening right now. When it's going to accelerate, from a march to a stampede, I think people have to protect themselves now. I mean, look at our strategies. Look at how much gold stocks are up or silver stocks. Talk about gold and silver. I mean, you're talking about stocks that have tripled, quadrupled so far this year, and Wall Street still doesn't own them. So this, I think, is still early in the scheme of things. So what your listeners should do, if they didn't follow my advice, 3 months ago and 6 months ago, to get on this train, you haven't missed it. I mean, you still got to get on. You got to get out of U.S. dollars, get out of U.S. stocks. You should be talking to my representatives at Euro Pacific Capital. Set up an account. Take your depreciating dollars before they really collapse, and diversify abroad. Get some money into Switzerland and Singapore and New Zealand.
And by the way, Peter Schiff is not a sponsor. I ought to call him, get him to be one. I mean, I think the guy's a great guy, but I do agree people should be diversifying. But, I mean, look, let me ask you this question then, Peter. Looking at the time frame historically here, I understand it's already here in most of the world. It's already here in the U.S. at a trot, and you're talking about a gallop, a stampede. What's the time frame, though? I mean, I know you don't, I mean, speculatively.
I think the election could be a catalyst, because I think one of the reasons that Janet Yellen is reluctant to admit how weak the economy is because she doesn't want to interrupt the Hillary Clinton narrative. I mean, the whole idea that Obama saved us, everything is great, and now we should turn over the reins to Hillary.
So we're in la-la land until the election ends.
Yeah, I mean, but thing is, things are getting so bad. Can the Fed hold out and still pretend everything is good until the election? But certainly by the time the election is over, there's no reason to put up the pretense. So I think by the end of the year, the Fed's going to have to come to the rescue, at least what it thinks is the rescue. They're going to cut rates. They're going to try to have some kind of QE program. But again, this is pouring gasoline on the fire. None of this is going to help solve our problems. This is why we have a problem. The Federal Reserve has created this problem, and they make it worse.
I agree. Let me ask you a politically selfish question, but the audience wants to know. I'm worried Trump's going to get in, and then they're going to hold the collapse back till then and then blame it on him.
Well, look, I don't think they'll be able to blame it on Trump if it happens, right when he walks into the office. But I think the crisis is going to happen regardless of who we elect. I do think that Trump has a better chance of doing the right thing than Hillary. Hillary has no chance of doing the right thing. Trump might. See, it all depends on, he does a good job of identifying the problems. His solutions are all wrong. Now, maybe he knows they're wrong. Maybe he's just playing politics.
Sure, because he wants low interest rates.
The real solution.
He wants low interest rates because he's a builder. We'll be right back. We've got our guest here, Peter Schiff, joining us, EuroPacificCapital.com. He's been dead on so far, so we're going to come back and I'm going to ask him what's front and center on his radar, not just my question. Stay with us.